All right, everybody, we're just getting a few more people signed up, and we'll be getting started here in just a minute with Harry. All right, everybody, this is Craig. I'm actually the host today. Before we get started with Harry, be right back with you. Just getting a few more people that are signing in on the Zoom. All right, everybody. I'm Kraig Strom. I work with a team here at Secura Wealth Management, and I'm excited to introduce Harry Barth. He'll be our speaker today for Secura Future TV. Great topic. Harry has got years and years of experience in the financial planning space, and we are going to get right into it. I'm going to go ahead and get Harry connected in right now.
Today, I want to talk about a very, very, very important part of the financial planning process. As we'll all remember from our previous sessions together, financial planning is a process that encompasses numerous areas. The numerous areas are cash flow, emergency fund planning, liquidity planning, very, very important part of financial planning, risk management, in where we evaluate all of our insurance coverages, our property and casualty coverages, our life insurance, disability, long-term care coverages to make sure they're adequate and no gaps. There's also a very important subset of that is, as you've heard me speak many, many times, is asset protection planning. So in addition to insurance, the appropriate and proper legal processes that are involved. And then a segment or that we're going to talk about today that used to be called, I say used to be called, retirement planning that we're going to talk about. And today we're going to rebrand that as financial independence planning. And then the other components that we'll speak about in future sessions are tax planning. And ultimately, if we've been successful at all of our plans, appropriate and proper estate planning as we move our wealth from one generation to the next. So why do I talk about today financial independence planning? Because I really feel that over the years, retirement planning with all the formulas that we see in the newspapers and the magazines, if you have X amount of capital and you spend no more than 4% per year, your assets will last for your lifetime. And they have all these formulas on how to construct an appropriate retirement. So I'm not so sure that I'm a big fan of that at all. I'm much more of a fan of working to achieve our financial independence. Now, financial independence to me means that we have enough capital that we can meet our financial goals and objectives based upon the amount of capital that we have and the earnings on that capital, and not necessarily upon labor-driven capital going to work. So many people are financially independent, they work because they love their work, they love their profession, they love the things that they do. But it's not required to work in order to maintain themselves in the world that they're accustomed to. To me, that is one of the best places to be. So, and when we talk about retirement, I think times have changed. Times have changed. Years ago, I've been doing this for close to 50 years. Years ago, it was, you reached age 65, you got the gold watch, you sat in the chair, you put on the grandma cardigans, and that was it. Retirement wasn't very much. But today, through modern medical marvels and other, we'll call it the physical considerations, people are living a much longer period of time. And financial independence / AKA retirement, we'll only use financial independence for the rest of the day, to me is broken into phases. The first phase, because people can actually be in the financial independence phase for 30 some odd years, actually longer in the financial independence phase sometimes than they were in the working phase. So to me, this is a very important and critical part of the overall financial planning process. And it's in 3 phases. So the first phase is upon switching, for example, from labor-driven capital to equity and capital-driven capital for us, it's a very active phase. In this phase, people like to travel. Sometimes they start a second career. They get heavily involved in their avocations and sports. They are busy, active, and as a result of it, they are actually spending as much money, if not more money, than they spent while they were in the working phase of their planning, which is interesting because when I do planning and I ask people, I said, well, let's talk about setting up the budget that's needed for the financial independence period. They traditionally say, well, I could probably live on 50 to 60% of my current income. And I look at them and I say, so if you woke up tomorrow morning with nothing really changing, but your income is cut in half, you'd be happy, you'd be able to do the things that you want to do? And the answer is traditionally no. And in reality, we find that the vast majority of people need at least equal to what they're earning now. Of course, we have to take tax considerations into play in order to meet their lifestyle goals, especially in phase 1, which lasts for 10 years, well, sometimes more. But it's a very active period of time. We're not sitting in the rocking chair with the cardigan whatsoever. The second phase of financial independence planning, phase 2, is when we do slow down physically, mentally. Age is beginning to take its toll, and we do slow down, and we don't travel as much. We're not as active as we used to, but we're still quite busy, quite involved in so many things, but maybe not quite as physically active as we used to be. And again, today, the problem with in so many areas is not dying too soon, it's living too long. But in this period of time, maybe expenses in some respects are a little bit less, but we have to be worried about inflation and how that impacts our ability to pay our bills and maintain our lifestyle. And as we know today, inflation has been kicking up on us a little bit. And for those of us that may be in the financial independence phase, it is one of the worst enemies that we face. But we're also facing probably the increased cost of medical care. The car's got to go in the shop a little bit more often. The odometer is running a little bit higher, so we have some more costs associated with that. So appropriate and proper throughout this period of time, medical insurance planning, the proper utilization of Medicare supplements, all come into play and become part of the budgetary process. So what happens is, though we may not travel as much or spend as much money on travel, we may be spending more money on medical care and other types of expenses that are a little bit more age related. And as the third phase comes along, the third phase is a very sad phase. Is the phase where our cognitive ability is declining significantly. We may require a lot of home care being brought to us, modifications to our houses, long-term care, potentially long-term care facilities and the cost that's associated with it, and all the planning that's associated with that. Because, again, the income may not keep pace. Expenses are now going up even higher than before, and it can wipe out our ability to leave a legacy to the next generation. So we have these three phases that have to be dealt with. So when we are dealing with financial independence planning, and when we are talking about the investment portfolios and asset management portfolios to meet these phases, I think that we have to have an income that's generating to meet the phases for us. In other words, we know that we have a higher because we have a desired travel and other types of expense and hobby expenses. In phase one, we are busy, we are active, maybe more active than we were when we were working. So if we set our portfolios for the classical retirement portfolios, which are more fixed income oriented, more stable types of investments, because we're worried about variability, then literally the consumption of our assets are such that we may run out of money before we reach the end of phase two or phase three, and we will have had a failed financial independence period. So far as I'm concerned, when we counsel clients in this one particular spot, my job is to make sure that our portfolios and income sources, and I'm going to talk to you about a process about that in a moment, are such that they are meeting the demands of that period of time. And then we want to make sure we have appropriate long-term care for phase three, and we have a proper income. So we have a long period of time. We need to have growth-oriented investments that don't particularly fit in the typical retirement portfolio in order for retirement to be successful. In the old days, ladies and gentlemen, we worked for a company for 50 years and they gave us a pension, and the pension equaled 60, 70% of our income. Then we had some Social Security on top of that, and we had our qualified retirement plans, and it was enough to make a retirement. Well, those 60% defined benefit plans, retirement plans, have kind of gone the way of a horse and buggy, and the responsibility for successful financial independence rests upon us and all the planning that we do. So we've had proper budgets back in phase one. We have proper insurance. God forbid we lose our ability to earn income beforehand, and we have proper planning for this period of time. We also must take into consideration during this period of time tax mitigation, because taxes are also an enemy. If we're losing 30, 40% of our earnings to taxing authorities, depending on what state we live in, that makes it even more challenging for us to maintain financial independence. So we want to not only generate the capital growth, income, and distributions that are needed, but we also need to make sure that they're tax efficient in order to maximize the portfolios, in order to cover the various different three phases of financial independence. I think that's absolutely critical. Now, one of the things that so it's all planning, ladies and gentlemen. It's all planning, and one of the greatest positions to be in is you work because you want to. You have enough capital to live on till you become the age of Methuselah. We have tax mitigated as best as possible, and all of our assets are diversified, so not any one asset category can hurt us. And as well, we want to make sure that our income being generated is targeted to the phases of financial independence. It's a big challenge. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of integration with your advisors, but at the end, that is the way to go, and that's where we want to see every single client that we work with get to that point. I have many people that are actively working in their professions with clients that don't need to. They just don't need to in any way, shape, or form. That's where I think we all should be. And it's not easy to do. It's challenging. The other part of the challenge that I'd like to talk about with you is process. I have found this to be an interesting challenge, so I'd like to share it with each and every one of you. I have retired hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people over the course of my career, and I've learned that one of the biggest things in the first year or two, when we've moved from labor to financial independence based upon capital, is there's no structure anymore. It's kind of gone. We have masses of accounts. We make balance sheets. We look at things, but it's not the same, and people are confused. People make mistakes. So here's what we've done. I've kind of set up a system that I'll share with you, and let me show you how it works. And it's a way to measure how we are progressing in our phases of financial independence. And it can't be something that requires you to integrate with me every single day or your advisor every single day. It just needs to be an engine that can be measured. So I've developed this engine that I'd like to share with you now that I hope you will find fascinating to use. It's not overly complicated. So here's what we do. So we kind of create an omnibus account. We'll just call it master account. And from the master account, right, we take all of our inflows, our capital inflows, our interest inflows, our dividend inflows, our oil and gas royalty inflows, our real estate income inflows, all of our inflows from our various different diversified asset allocated investment portfolios, no matter where they are. These inflows all flow into our master account. And we seed this master account with approximately 6 months of our anticipated expenses. So if our anticipated expenses, using this strictly as a model, $10,000 a month, we would, after tax, we would seed the $60,000 worth of assets into this account. We would also take those annual type expenses, large life insurance premiums and or other expenses, divide them by 12, and then allocate, 6 months of that. So that may take that 10,000 to 12,000 or 13,000, depending upon larger annual expenses. And that becomes, we'll call it the measuring account. And then from the measuring account, based upon our needs and goals and budgetary requirements, we take money out of that account in the form of a paycheck, maybe once a month, maybe every 2 weeks, kind of giving us back that sense of how we used to get paid, even if we owned our own businesses, while we were in the labor end of working rather than in the capital intent. So if my monthly income requirement was $10,000 a month based upon our earlier processes in financial planning, I'd take out the $10,000 a month and pay that $10,000 would go into my checking account, and my wife and I would pay our bills. So that's really good. So then what would happen is every 6 months, so to speak. So then the engine of all of our investments, Social Security, whatever else we have, pension plans, Roth IRAs, 401ks, minimum required distributions, so many sources of potential financial independence income are all feeding into this one master account that we're taking out our $10,000 a month. So we have a paycheck. That gives us the stability that we used to have. And, we're not guessing every month. We don't have that fear of, how we're going to pay our bills. What if this one doesn't pay its dividend on time? Blah, 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 blah. Then we measure, right? And the measurement is kind of simple when you think about it. So let's say we did a measurement at the end of 6 months. We're at 6 months. Got it, 6 months. And we started by seeding our account, let's say, with $60,000, 6 months of $10,000 a month of income. And so if at the end of the 6 month measurement period, we look at that master account and we have $50,000 that's in it, not $60,000, we have spent more money in our $10,000 a month salary than the engine was capable of producing by $10,000. So we know if we keep doing that, we're ultimately, down the road, somewhere along the line, maybe in phase 3, going to run out of money. So we have choices. So our choices are to cut back our $10,000 a month, maybe to $8,000 a month, if that made sense. But if we didn't want to do that, or we wanted to maintain our $10,000 monthly income, we would look up at the engines that are producing the revenue and see whether or not we can increase the revenue into the engine. So at the end of 6 months, we have $60,000 of revenue in relation to $60,000 of income. So that's a pretty easy measurement. And then we look at that and say, okay, in increasing the risk of the engine, did we turn around and that risk was so high that it was uncomfortable and left our portfolios with the great degrees of volatility? Maybe we need to shuffle the deck. Maybe we need to make sure we have a better allocation. Maybe we also recognize that we are not going to be able to live on the gains, income, interest, and dividends. We just were unable to put that together during our lifetime to be able to maintain it for retirement. So what we now measure is whether or not, by using some of the income into our master account and some of the capital principal from our engines into our capital account, how long that money would last given a reasonable rate of return before we ran out of money. If it was able to cover our lifetime, yes, there wouldn't be as big a legacy for our heirs, but we will have had a successful retirement. If we look at that account at the end of 6 months, ladies and gentlemen, and we have $60,000 in it and we took 60,000 out, guess what? We are holding our own, and we've measured it every 6 months in increments going down the line. Our retirement or our financial independence is successful, at least at its onset. Now, of course, we may have to decide that our $10,000 a month is not going to be that good in the future because we're experiencing 4, 5, 6% inflation. So I need $10,600 a month to buy the same things that I did with $10,000. So we need to hopefully make sure that the engines that are providing the assets to our master account are such that at the end of 6 months, our $60,000 is still there. Now, at the end of 6 months, we have the third result, which is the one that I'm going to try so hard to help you achieve. Instead of having the $60,000, I now have $70,000. And so I have some choices. One, I can increase my monthly salary above the $10,000 because my earnings are such to justify that. Or I could dial back the volatility in the engines that I have so I could take less risk on the engines loaded into the master account because I've been successful in what I have done. So I hope what you're beginning to see in our financial independence and our structures, with great process, great asset allocation and diversification. And we'll talk about asset allocation and investment planning in another one of our sessions together. You'll find that it's possible, even in today's day and age, with work, serious planning, proper financial planning, the full financial planning process integrated with the financial independence process, you can achieve an absolutely wonderful Act 2. And it's our job to help you achieve that Act 2. And I can assure you, we are really good at that. And I look forward to helping each and every one of you through that process. And let me give you a little bit about my qualifications to help you, differing from most. Yes, I'm an attorney and I have a doctorate in law. I have 2 master's degrees in financial planning. I'm a certified financial planner, a chartered financial consultant, and I'm also a certified life underwriter. And I have been doing this for close to 50 years and helping people every single day. And believe me, in that big spectrum of the financial planning process, integrated with the legal process, integrated with the retirement process, I don't think we miss a beat. And I look forward to helping each and every one of you. And I hope that you've enjoyed this particular video. It's one of my favorites. And we'll expand. We're going to talk about independence planning, estate planning, and tax mitigation in future shows together. So thank you all, and thanks for being with me today. Bye.